And welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Maybe you're good-looking because you're always looking for and finding the good. You found good in abundance because you tuned in consciously and conscientiously to Marriage with Joy. Notice I didn't say marriage with joy. Marriage with joy, because that's what we discuss on this show. This show is about the ability to be in the most intimate, the most interesting, the most intricate relationship in the history of humanity and make something from it that not only touches the people that are involved, but literally everyone around it and affects the entire world. That's how much I care about marriage and my dear beloved partners on this podcast. And I'm just so honored and happy to say that we're concluding, I think, our second or third year, I don't even remember now, of doing this. And thank God, thousands of people around the world really enjoy what we do because it's open discussion. We really touch on things that matter to people. And this particular show, I'm going to date it. It's November 27th, and in the year 2024. If you're now, this may be being watched a decade from now, half a century, 100 years from now, and however people consume content at that time. And they'll say, wow, they were discussing this thing even 100 years ago, and they made sense. So yes, we want to. As I say, the reason I'm mentioning the date is because we're on the eve of what I call the quintessential American experience or American holiday, which is the day called Thanksgiving. It is so uniquely American. Now, with that said, it literally harkens back millennia because it has its roots in the Bible. And the biblical experience is all about the ability to recognize and give thanks for what is given to one in terms of being able to have bounty or even small amount. However, to recognize that it really comes through the Creator. And it comes through, obviously, hard work. And it comes through the ability to recognize that there are things in the world that are beyond oneself. And once you do that, now you can step into the marriage process, because marriage is really the, how should we call it, the living of Thanksgiving on a daily basis. At least for me, the ability to recognize that I'm blessed with a, okay, we'll call it the current term, what do they call it? Life partner for over 4.5 decades, 47 plus years. And that things go in waves and all kinds of ways to do it. And the ability to give thanks for that. So that's what this show is really all about. We are honored and blessed to have with us up in the very almost frozen Northwest. Okay, it's not that bad. The cold Northwest, our wonderful, beloved Dr. Diane Medved. Hey, Dr. Diane. And by the way, the lights are on, the system's working, and you have heat again, right?
It came back, yes, Saturday night, Motzi Shabbat. Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
We
Okay.
had 4.5 days without any power.
It's an interesting way to live, isn't it? For a few days. It's really, again, talk about Thanksgiving. We'll go right into that. And in the far southeast corner of the country, on the Gulf side of Florida, our wonderful, delightful, always pleasant Maura Sweeney. Hello, wonderful Maura, who has been without power sometimes in the past couple of months because of hurricanes going through and such like that.
So we recently had our 4 days with no power. do.
So she knows also. And our wonderful beloved Lori McDermott, who is not here, she is braving the weather of Chicago and was not able to be with us today in this time and place. We always cherish her, and she is resident. I'm here in Henderson, Nevada, which I can tell you today it's just so lovely here. People think of the Las Vegas area, Nevada, as, oh my gosh, the heat is so oppressive. Okay, 3 months out of the year, it gets very hot. Not hot like in humid with Floridian humidity. It's hot, desert hot, which means bearable, even at 105, 106, 107, etc. But most of the year, not in. And most of the year, 9 months plus out of the year, it's like now, it's 40 degrees in the morning and 60 plus in the afternoon, heated pool at 80 degrees. Who could ask for anything more? So, as I said, we're on the eve of Thanksgiving, the essential American holiday. It is expressed in today's environment in many different ways because there's still a clash of culture going on. And again, the other reason I mentioned our date is because we are now 22 days past the American election, which this year was truly a time to give thanks for 3 reasons. I'll mention just very quickly. Not because my candidate won, and then nothing to do with that. It's because there were no riots after the election. It's a wonderful thing. And the second thing is that people are now, even those people who were, for want of a better term, on the losing side, are recognizing that we can breathe a little easier for the moment. Okay, there's going to be battles because we have different opinions of things, but people can breathe a little easier in the sense that there's going to be a transition of power, and now is the shift. And the third thing is that there's actually a recognition that what we've been going through for the past, not just 4 years or 8 or almost 2 decades, dealing with words and ideas that are very, how should we call them, controversial, are now at least we're going to be able to talk about them. And without fear of people saying, well, that just because you open your mouth, you must be a racist or a sexist or a homophobe, et cetera, et cetera. We might be able to have discussions. And for that alone, we should give thanks. Because in my humble opinion, I'm going to say, and then I'll turn over to talk to Diane and tell you some of the questions that we had. This all revolves around a remarkable word called kindness. Everybody loves being kind. Even the people who were hurling epithets 3 weeks ago or 3.5 weeks ago. Everybody wants kindness because I think almost everybody recognizes that kindness is the mark of nobility. The ability to live in a societal or functioning societal environment where people can extend kindness one to another, no matter what it is that the other person believes or thinks, et cetera, except, of course, they're threatening your life physically. So kindness, I think, is one of the drivers of America. And I want to begin with you, Dr. Diane, because you've written books about it, you think about it, you live it, and especially with you and Michael and your community and such, that kindness is a fundamental, foundational aspect of having not just a successful marriage, but a marriage that literally engenders and gives birth to kindness. Is that true? What would you say about that? I mean, it seems too obvious.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Frankly, we should strive to have kindness around us. Our leaders should exemplify kindness. And we, as the leaders of our children and the leaders of relationships within our control, should strive to be kind at every opportunity. And what that means basically is 2 things. Don't be stubborn and don't think of yourself first. Think about other people. Today, I was at the market, and the market today, the day before Thanksgiving, is a zoo. I was there with my 2 grandchildren, 2 of my 5, thank God, grandchildren. two girls, and they like to play with each other and they like to instigate each other. And I was trying to check out and put the groceries on the conveyor belt, and they were leaning on the conveyor belt and trying to climb. I mean, they're age 7 and 6 now. The 6-year-old just had a birthday. You'd think they could at least help me put the stuff on the conveyor belt. No, they were trying to climb on the conveyor belt, and the two women behind us had all their groceries in their arms. And I was trying to get stuff on there. When I noticed what they were doing, it was like, don't think of yourself first. Look around you and see what's going on with people around you first. And notice that these two ladies are holding all their groceries in their arms, and that must be difficult for them to keep them there without dropping them. And think about what's going on with them. And I think that's sort of the root of kindness, is to not put yourself first, to put other people first, and to look around and to see what's going on and see where you can do something to help them. Just by them getting off the conveyor belt, they lightened the load for these two women who were so sweet. They were so nice about it. They were chuckling and they were, oh, don't worry about it. But it's like, no, this is a teaching moment. And the lesson is, think of others first. I think that's the basis of kindness, where you don't consider yourself and your own needs the primary instigator for your actions. It should be other people's needs and other things going on around you. And I think in your marriage, that's also important. You know, I try every night when I get into bed to pray a little, and I make an effort to pray for my husband first, before I pray for my children, before I pray for my country, certainly before myself. But we're talking about marriage here. And if you can pray for your husband first, then that gets you thinking about him or her or your spouse first. And that sort of helps you with your own developing of chesed, kindness, if you think of others first. So anyway, that's a couple thoughts that came to mind.
Okay, let's expand on those, wonderful Dr. D. I am just so deeply touched that you brought that up. So there's a line that I like to quote the Dalai Lama on. I actually heard him say it, not me personally. I heard it from a YouTube. And he said, you know, this great line, be kind whenever possible. And it's always possible, says he. The ability to think of the other first is the practice of a lifetime, isn't it?
And certainly of a marriage.
And this is
because you have another person who is not far from you, who is right there, and you can develop your kindness muscle so easily with that person, just by the way you speak, by the way you see what your needs are, by the way that you smile or don't smile. It's so easy. So you might as well take the low-hanging fruit and be kind to the person that is closest to you. And what that does is, in the end, the kindness comes back, as the Dalai Lama would be wont to say.
And it builds a muscle, as you were saying, the giving muscle, the recognizing. I love the image, by the way, of the grocery store. It was a formative time in my life, my personal life. I was 15, 16, and 17. I worked at a grocery store called the Star Market. I'm using my Boston accent. You like that, Mara? I can still do it. The Star Market. For those who don't understand, I just said Star Market. And the ability to work with other people, first of all, peers, my own age group, and helping other people and listening, having a boss and having customers and recognizing what the customers needed. So I could see that particular scene and seeing women, I don't care if they were 19 or they were 65, carrying 8, 9, 10 items. And now what do you do? How does one respond to them? Are they just statues standing there with stuff? Or is there something that could be done to help them? So to have that radar up for oneself, and as you said, in a teaching moment, to be able to share that experience either with words or even better by deed with grandchildren or children, or especially oneself, and recognize another and do something. Wow, Is there anything more beautiful and wonderful and caring,
Rewarding. It
and
feels
rewarding?
like help someone else.
So let's talk. Just talk it out. There happens to be this one that you use this great idea called in Hebrew. It's called chesed. English, we'll call it, for want of a better term, we'll call it kindness, giving. And it's a phrase in Psalms, I believe, number 89 in the third sentence. And in Hebrew, it says, Olem chesed yibona, which means the world was established, was built on kindness. Now, again, we're talking about things that are coming through God somehow, through prophets, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a theme in the human condition. Giving is, once it's part of you and you practice it, much like people go to the gym. There is no difference between the physical gymnasium and the spiritual gymnasium. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about marriage. Marriage is the ultimate spiritual gymnasium, isn't it? Right? You're there from morning till evening, lifting weights, doing things, and it's building up muscles that we don't want them to atrophy, and we don't want them to become, how should we say it, crusted over. To be able to be sensitive to a spouse who one is with, let's call it 24/7, even if you don't see them 24/7. We know they're there. How does one respond in those wonderful situations? Thank you. So the ability to think of others first. Wonderful, Maura. Please expand on this great insight into being kind, because you mentioned that you're either going to now or you're about to go tomorrow to help neighbors prepare for Thanksgiving.
I just did. And I was like, you know how Lori slides in at the last minute? I'm like, I think I'm going to pull a Lori this month. Our neighborhood, I'm part of the hospitality committee. I think I almost started it. And we have been bringing together neighbors, maybe that otherwise wouldn't know each other. And we've been using a couple of holidays to do this. And I was just over, first of all, I was making homemade pies. And then I was like running over and I was like, wait a minute, I have the marriage webinar at 6 and not at 7. And then I come home, I'm trying to make dinner with Jimmy. Anyway, so I'm definitely right in that zone for thinking about Thanksgiving. And for those maybe like myself that don't have a big family around, or not living close to families, what an opportunity to extend your heart, our hearts, toward our neighbors, maybe to other people that don't have family or don't have connections. I don't want to go too off topic. The word kindness, I love. I didn't even know we were going to go here for Thanksgiving. It is so powerful. Diane, I think, did you use the word? Well, you were talking about being aware of others around you when it comes to kindness. My first thought when you mentioned this word kindness was that it shows up in the form of respect. There is something that is transcendent. And trust me, I've had to use it a lot of times in my life. We've all ended up in places where people mistreat us, some because they don't know any better, and others because that's an agenda. And I always try to respond with respect and a show of kindness. What do we oftentimes look to do? Our societies are always, everybody's so easily triggered and they want to give a tit for tat. But I always think there is something so beautiful and so transcendent of responding with something else. And when we do respond in kindness, which is also shown through respect, Diane, I still can't get the picture of your cute granddaughters, even though I've never met them, on the conveyor belt, because you know what? I was brought up very strictly, but I was one of those kids. I would have loved to be on that conveyor belt. So I'm thinking, how cute is that? Those times in life come and go so quickly. But you brought out a very interesting thing. So many people, unfortunately, today in our culture, think about themselves. They've been trained to think about something I didn't know existed years ago called microaggressions. So it's almost like we're ready for somebody to offend us. And it becomes very insular, very inside thinking rather than being broadly thinking. And for you to say, oh my gosh, let me think about these ladies that are busy holding. Do you realize even in that moment, you get an opportunity to model respect, you model kindness, and there is something that enables people to connect either with something of the heart or something of a higher order behavior and frame of mind because they're experiencing it. You could make a joke, you could correct the grandchildren, put them where they belong, ask them to help you. It's a wonderful opportunity to get to know the people behind you in line. But experiences like that, we can use as a means of communicating with others. The other thing I wanted to say about kindness, to your point, is that when we give that, it is a force. It is something sometimes that we may not even have to use words for, but people feel it. And when they do, it really makes an impression on people. They may have never been in an environment where people treated them kindly, and they may not know what it is. I want to, since there's only the three of us on today, there's something I want to bring out. Earlier today, and it goes along with this. Earlier today, I had gone to a workout class up the block at Safety Harbor Health Spa, which is also a resort. And I thought, well, it's a beautiful day without humidity. Let me take 10 minutes, get in the sun. So I'm at the resort pool, and where they have regular members like myself, they have a lot of outsiders, which is great place to meet and to interact with people. And there was a woman, maybe maximum 40 years old, but she had two little preschool children. They were in and out of the pool on vacation. If I could tell you, they were darling, having such a good time. I listened to this woman who I didn't know, never met before. And my heart hurt for the way in which she spoke to her children. And I'm sitting there, and, I interact with everybody. I don't think I've ever met a stranger. Within minutes, because of her shortness of patience, she ended up with both of those adorable little children in tears and brought them back into their room. And I was like, well, what do I do? Do I say something? Part of me wanted to say, do you have any idea of what a gift these children are? For those who have not heard me before on this marriage webinar, or those who have, my husband and I could cry about this. It took us 11 years to have one child. And I wanted to say to this woman, do you have any idea of what you're doing? But you know what? Back to your point, Diane, she had no awareness of self. She didn't even know her thoughts. And I thought, there's nothing I can say here. There's nothing I could compliment. There's nothing I can even make her awareness of. But there was one thing I did when I left. I found myself going away and I started praying for her. And my prayer was, dear God, give her eyes that she can see what's in front of her. Give her ears that she can hear the power of her words, and let her sense what she is injecting into these little hearts. And I mean, it really, you could see it almost broke my heart. But back to the point about kindness, I couldn't say anything because she was that somewhere tough, or maybe I thought she's unhappy, she's bitter, but I thought at least I could pray. And I thought that could be my own way of reaching out to this woman, that she too might be able to lift up and not see these children as an imposition to her already imperfect life. When she's on vacation, sitting at a pool in Florida on Thanksgiving, she's not cheap, that she could see that she is a blessed woman. And it was, I would call it a force. I would call it something that was unspoken, but it was a kindness prayer that she might be able to see and hear and perceive even what the future will be like. Because it's very hard for little children who have had so much of that to fight their way out of, and to think that they're always in the way or they're always problematic. That's why I was laughing at your grandchildren on the computer.
Whoa, okay. Let's unpack a few things here. So, Maura, I have to personally have to ask you, because I can smell from the kitchen. What are you baking? What pies?
I am making, the joke was they were called unterbottom pies because I learned about them from a Dutch woman. I said, I've never had such a great apple pie. What is it? She said, oh, it's unterbottom. And I said, oh, I need that unterbottom recipe. And her daughter-in-law, who's totally American, this lady was Dutch, she said, Maura, she's trying to tell you she put marzipan unterbottom of the pie, meaning on the bottom of the pie. They are so good. I'm making 2 of them, one to bring to the neighborhood thing and one for Jimmy, because I know he's going to be upset if he can't bring extra home. So that's what I'm doing. And last night
Okay, that's one. I'm hoping you're going to tell me you're making a pumpkin pie as well.
No, we already have one.
Oh, you'll have some. Okay.
We already do.
Okay, good.
So busy making apple pies. Last night it was homemade strombolis. I don't know how after 44 years of marriage I decided I'm now going to be Susie Homemaker. It's fun.
Okay, so let's unpack a few things here. We're going to share with everybody the acronym that I use for the word KIND, which stands for Keep Inspiring Noble Deeds, because that's what happens when you're kind. And I must tell you, I was very touched. I'm still very touched by what it is that you witnessed with this young mother and 2 children, and the approach that you managed to take or to give is that of channeling a prayer. Anybody listening to this can say, well, okay, big deal. And then let's just use those same words and say, hey, big deal. In other words, that's a big deal. Because we have no understanding truly of what it means to be able to share prayer. You mentioned it, Diane. To say prayer at night is one thing. That's a very great level. To say prayers for your family, it's a higher level. To say prayers for the being that's with you first. What a wonderful way to expand one's life as you go into this area that we all experience for somewhere between 6 and 8 hours every day, where your subconscious is really determining what it is that your conscious being was about all day. So if you go in your subconscious with prayer as your last act of the day, well, that's what stays with you and really broadens you. So when you get up in the morning, you are again filled with, as we know from Diane telling us, her first words are, thank you, dear Lord, that I'm alive. So if you go to sleep with prayers and you wake up with prayers, well, guess what? You have an opportunity, potential to be, like you said, aware. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to date myself. Remember that there was a TV show called My Favorite Martian many years ago. If you know anybody doesn't know it, people, everybody,
Austin.
Yeah. But remember those little things that went up, those are our antenna, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to just do a little riff here because this is like a jazz session. What you mentioned, the word respect, then you talked about being transcendent. And I love that T word. I also really like the T word called transformational. And that's really, I think, what happens in this modality called being kind and actually looking for an opportunity to be kind. And I think that's what happens. I know that's what happens during this Thanksgiving weekend, which is really the Thanksgiving month, because Thanksgiving and the day or two before is the predecessor to the entire month of holiday. Because let's be blunt, the other anchor is Christmas, which is a revelatory experience that lasts for more than just a day and a night. And oftentimes, and especially this calendar year, it is interspersed with the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, which lasts 8 days or more. So the amount of thanksgiving and the process of kindness and the process of thinking of others, of buying presents, being present. That was a little play on words. Buying present, being present, and giving is in these last few weeks of the entire calendar year in what is truly, to quote the very interesting man, the greatest country on God's green earth, the United States of America. And I think, I know right now, because of the election, now more than ever, there's a lighthouse that's there. Granted, as you said, Diane, it's up to the leaders to exemplify and amplify and be the examples for others in being magnanimous and generous and giving and understanding. We have the attention of the world. When I mean me, I mean we, this podcast. We have the attention of the world right now. Okay, not everybody in the world is watching. However, we are reaching tens and maybe even hundreds of thousands. And I ask all the time, please share this with 5 people. If you want to do it with 50 or 100, that's up to you. We appreciate that much, but at least 5. Because I know if you share with 5, we're going to touch at least 50,000 people. And there are 50,000 people that want the message, that will revel in the message, will love the message. So as we go into our next session, I'd just like to share, if I may, I'm going to ask permission of Diane and Laura. May I share with you the, what do you call it? My acronym for Thanksgiving.
I always
Oh, we're gonna say no.
If you said no, I still do it, but that's okay, man. I appreciate you saying yes. So here's the acronym for Thanksgiving, which is, it's a long word, or 2 words. So, okay, thanks stands for to harmonize and nurture kindness successfully. That's thanks. Giving is generosity, invigorates vitality, inspiring noble graciousness. You like it?
That's a gift. That's a gift that you could do all that. If I ever write my next book, I may have to inquire if you could give titles and acronyms for everything I come up with. You're amazing.
It's so much fun to be able to turn these words into expressions that people can utilize and internalize and leverage. So I want to go to something that may sound on its face a little bit different than the first part of what we've been discussing. However, I found it so fascinating because every once in a while I touch the social media world and found something that catches my eye. And this one was, I thought, quite fascinating because I know that every year it's brought up. And that is that, again, this is the beginning of the season to be jolly and happy and giving and awareness of others. Let's be blunt, awareness of others. And there was a post about people in their 40s, it said, people in 40s and 50s, what do you think about the holidays? Do you have regrets because you didn't get married? Because this is, of course, the marriage with joy. And I read some of the comments. And most of them they weren't bitter. They weren't upset. Most of them revolved around something that you mentioned, Diane, specifically, and you alluded to also, Maura. And that is, most of the people who responded, at least the post that I saw, said they didn't get married. They don't have children. They don't regret it. And one of the major reasons is because they have more time for themselves. And I know that one of the premises of what we do here at Marriage with Joy is that the self is a very vital part of living successfully. We don't want to denigrate self. We want to, in any way, uplift it. We want it to be, how should we say, expanded by touching another self. So 2 selves become more than just 1 + 1. It's the exponential factor. So I'd like to speak, because Diane, you've written books on the subject, you're a psychologist, you deal with people all the time. Here we are in the season where people want to be happy, want to be giving, want to be doing things. And there seems to be a loneliness factor that is also accompanies this celebration of life. So I'd like you to speak to that in terms of the idea of being kind.
Okay. Well, if you're married, then one would think that you're not alone. If you have a partner, then you, as you put it so well, Barry, you have expanded yourself to be a larger entity, which is the best parts and whatever else of the other person with you together. You're a team. You become a more complex and more capable unit because you're together. And someone who's lonely in a marriage should be thinking about why and how that can be fixed. Because marriage obviously is ideally your place of support, your safe haven, the place that you can go to when the rest of the world is disappointing. You can come back to your love of your life and allow that to be the place where you can let down your feelings and know that that person cares about them and takes them on. You know, when our partners are sick, then we want to care for them. And if our partners are going through a sad or difficult time, we want to lift up the parts that we can. And we want to support them as they go through that time. So loneliness is, if you're married, something that you can work on, especially now. And you can talk about it. Gee, I feel alone and I want to be closer to you. Don't remain silent. Don't try and take on some other friends outside the relationship. Turn toward your partner and say, I'm feeling apart from you. That's one of the great skills of my husband, Michael, is that he'll say, gee, I feel like we're a little bit apart now. And he'll bring that up because he never wants to feel that way. And I think that's a very positive thing that you can do. That's easy, or maybe not easy, depending on the source of that. But to do it, just saying, I'm feeling lonely and apart from you, is enough to turn the other person towards you. And that is so important. Aside from that, if you're not married, then you can choose. It takes more effort, but you can choose to be part of a relationship with other people. It can be around your church. It can be around an activity that you like. It can be people even at the gym. We're going to be hosting Thanksgiving, and we have probably about 14, 15 people. And one of them is going to be a young woman who is a teacher at the school where my daughter's the director. She's from Israel, and her family's all in Israel, and she doesn't know anybody. She has no place to go for Thanksgiving. And my daughter mentioned that, and I said, well, of course she's welcome, and she will be with us tomorrow. But I don't look at that as a negative or an interloper. On the other hand, I look at her as what I call the wild card, somebody who will spice up our interactions. We know what it's like to interact with each other, but if you can bring in another person who doesn't have a place to go, then your relationships are all enriched. And if you're that person, don't be afraid to say to someone who might have options for you that you're available. You don't have to say, I'm alone. You don't have to say, nobody invited me. You can say, I'm available for Thanksgiving. And that makes you desirable. And it makes it so that you want to give. It makes it so it seems that you want to be with other people. And that's a positive for them as much as for you. So don't be shy about it. You can always, and also another option is there's so many wonderful charitable lunches and dinners being given around. Join the people working on it. Dish out the gravy, just get in there and go to work, and you will find a community of people, and you won't be focused on yourself, because the fact that you're feeling lonely probably means that you made a space in your life. There's enough space in your life that can be there. But if you're busy all the time, you're caring for other people. I certainly don't have time to even think about it because I've got so much to do for Thanksgiving. That's a wonderful thing. I thank God for that, because we all have opportunities to give. And if you spend your time giving, you won't be lonely ever.
Woo! I want to make mention of some things that you said specifically. Words do matter, don't they? So if one says, I'm alone now during Thanksgiving, those are words that will almost easily come out of a person. If you can shift, and remember, keep that F in place so the other stuff happens. If you can shift your perspective a little bit and say, I'm available. First of all, the tone changes.
Mm-hmm.
You're not putting yourself in, well, this person is lonely or alone. Let's bring him in as if we're doing some charitable work. Hey, John's available. Wow, what an opportunity. It creates a different vibration. It was wonderful, Diane. Thank you. What a pleasure. And I can say here in a very personal way. So I've been to the table of Michael and Diane to during Shabbos experience, and not 2 or 3, 4 or 5 people. They're used to 12, 14, 20 people. And what a wondrous place to be, uplifting, because that's what it's about.
It's fun.
And it's fun, yes. Like we say, F-U, capital N, capital N, F-U, capital N, capital N, fun. And I love this line about dish out the gravy. Get involved. The nature and the genius of this time of the year is get involved. Do something. I had the great privilege of interviewing in my podcast a man named Kenneth Holder, names beside the plane, and he would say that as well. He's the commissioner for the entire Salvation Army of the United States of America. I happen to be a big fan of the Salvation Army, especially the Red Kettle, with the bringers. And so I had him on this second year going. And it's just such a pleasure for what they do. They reach out to people, like you said, Diane. They're looking for opportunity, and they invite people not just to come and to sit there and get fed, but they invite people in and say, participate, please. The way to become happier, healthier, and wealthier is to participate. Beautiful. Thank you. So, Wanda Bamora, you're going to be with neighbors, I presume, over Thanksgiving, and maybe even inviting other neighbors, knocking on doors. And will some of these people be Greek neighbors?
We have a whole clan of them here.
That's what I mentioned. That's why I asked. But they not just but they are Greek neighbors celebrating Thanksgiving because they're American of Greek heritage. That's all. And experience. So what is it? Do they bring in people who are on the periphery as well?
Yes, because they've invited us in several times. They are phenomenal neighbors. It's so funny. They always let we Greeks stick together. And they do, because they've got like 4 of them on the block, and they're all relatives. And they come from Boston and from Canada and obviously from Greece. And they're back and forth, and the families are in and out. And we've been over to them several times. And we have had such great times, so many laughs. They've got the great grandmother who does her, her rolled up grape leaves things, and she makes them special for Jimmy when she comes into town. Even as we're talking about this, I had several thoughts. Number one, this whole season that you're saying begins now goes not only through Hanukkah and Christmas, but it also goes through New Year's and New Year's Day. There really is almost this opening during this season where people who typically want to stay insular actually open their hearts. I'll notice going out for walks, perfect strangers will say hello to each other. They feel like I don't know, why can't every day be like this kind of a season? But I don't know if I'm digressing, but I want to key in on a couple of other thoughts, unless you want to further direct the questioning.
No, keep going.
Diane, you said something that Barry picked up on, and I did too. I want to say this. You talked about somebody could be lonely because they're alone, or they could be available. Now, because I speak oftentimes on the power of happiness, one of the key questions I ask people, and this is really a self-reflective question, whenever you're perceiving a problem or a heaviness in your life or something perplexing you, do you perceive yourself as a victim or a beneficiary? And those words, I'm alone versus I'm available, think about the energy. If you see yourself as alone/lonely, you're probably going to get fewer invitations. When you say, I have no plans, I'm actually available. people are, you feel different, number one, because now you're opening yourself up to new opportunities, and people around you, typically those who want to have a nice time, will say, hey, you know what? Come on over to our house. And my husband and I, even though we live in a townhome the past several years, I think I had place settings for 42 people at our last house. We were all of 3 people in a big house. We entertained the world, and I am not kidding you. We brought the world in, and we loved it. And Diane, you called your new guest coming in on Thanksgiving is the wild card for us. And our daughter, who was the only child, she got to meet the world. And she got to share with the world, and she got to learn from the world. And the world, first of all, these additional people helped us extend the sense of family that we really didn't have. We were 3 people down in Florida. And at the same time, they would walk into our home and they would feel like family. They would feel welcome. My goal was always to make everybody feel like royalty. And that didn't mean that I was a snooty person. It was, I wanted everyone from 3-year-old kids to 90-year-old people from another part of the world that I had never met before, all to feel like everybody here was waiting for you. And imagine being able to be that kind of a force, just as one person, just as one couple, just as one family, and sharing that love and that sense of belonging and that sense of appreciation with others. It's something that travels with people throughout their lives. Sometimes you could create an experience for people that will never leave them. Maybe they never had it before. All right, I went off way on a tangent.
No, that's not a tangent. That was wonderful.
I feel very strongly about these kinds of things, using our lives to be people of gratitude, people of appreciation of those who are around us, people who respect ourselves and show and convey a sense of respect to others. Because as we do that, we are elevating the world. Now I sound like we could start saying the world.
No, elevating the world. We call that, Maura, we call that a toga. Toga stands for tsunami of goodness always.
Oh, all right. Well, it's how I would like to live. So why not share it, right?
And sharing, of course, is spreading happiness and rejuvenating energy, which is what we're talking about here. So this is truly, truly a remarkably wonderful, positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant kickoff to the season. As I said, there's a new feeling in the United States of America, which is actually spreading throughout the world. There's an upbeat in the sense of possibility, of camaraderie, of goodness, of the ability to solve problems, because we do have problems. The ability to solve them, though, evolves around and is based on this one 4-letter word. We love 4-letter words: kind. Be kind. And as Diane began and told us that this was what the world is built upon, the ability to look at others first, to understand, to keep inspiring noble deeds, and understand that that is rooted in marriage. Because there's nothing more beautiful than 2 people who have, as we say, plighted their troth. I have no idea what that means, but it's a great phrase that people use, right? To plight their troth together and to understand that what we're doing is to build something that is beyond us, that is eternal, that goes on for generations, and that elicits prayer. See, because you married, Maura, to a wonderful guy, that's one of the reasons you were praying for some other people. Diane, because you're married to a wonderful guy, that's why you're praying. Fine, you're Jewish and you want to do this. You're praying not just because it becomes part and parcel of, well, this is what I do, because you're thinking about your husband first, and your children and grandchildren and other people. The genius of this uniquely American holiday, which again is rooted in the biblical process. The people who had the first Thanksgiving didn't do it in isolation. Michael, I'm sure, speaks about this regularly on your show, especially this season. I've given, I'll say one last thing, I'm going to have to sign off. It's important to think that the pilgrims, who some look at as interlopers and invaders and things like that, leave that aside. They were joined by hundreds of Native American Indians, because if it wasn't for the Native American Indians, they would have never made it through the winter. In the first winter, 50% of all the people who came on the Mayflower died. They died because they couldn't withstand the cold, the different processes. It was only because of the kindness of the native population that showed them how to plant and to use dead fish heads to put nutrients in the soil and to have a crop and to bring up corn and pumpkins, and shoot pheasant and turkey. And hundreds of Indians and settlers, pilgrims were there playing games and doing things. That was the first Thanksgiving. And they needed to give thanks. The pilgrims needed to give thanks because they were rooted in the biblical process. That put down the roots for America. So the prayer that you said, Maura, that came from you instinctively for this mother to recognize what she has, and the prayers that you say, Diane, these are not just words. They have a ripple effect in the life of our country and the life in the world. We are the beacon for the rest of the world, which really, to a great extent, does suffer under regimes that are not kind. We have a kind government. It's there's a lot of stuff goes on. Essentially, it's devoted to being kind for the benefit of the citizens and such. So I want to say a special thank you to you, Dr. Diane Medved, to you, wonderful Maura Sweeney, to you, Lori McDermott, the wife expert who's not with us today, and to everybody listening, watching, and sending in, and they love it. A true, heartfelt thank you for making the time, the effort, and your insights into making this what it is. People love the show. I mean, first of all, why not? But they love the show. As I said, God willing, starting January, we're going to step it up and see what we can do to bring in more sponsors and such like that, and lots of throwing some new things and such. So as we do, as is our wont, before we sign off, we're going to do a group hug and a blessing for everybody. And as we say, well, where I grew up, and Maura spent a lot of time in Boston, eat the bird. I don't know if you ever heard that, Maura, but that's what we said. Eat the bird.
I'll have to ask Jimmy.
Right. It doesn't matter.
About Larry Bird up there.
Eat the bird. Eat the bird. And right. And that doesn't talk about Larry. Eat the bird. Okay. So on the count of three, remember, hug, heartfelt, unlimited, giving. 1, 2, 3. And our blessing to everybody is go forth. Live exuberantly. Spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running.